With President Biden now dropping out of the presidential race, will the economy be a plus or a liability for potential nominee Kamala Harris? David Zervos is chief market strategist at Jefferies. Sarat Sethi is managing partner and portfolio manager at DCLA. They're both CNBC contributors. Great to have you guys here tonight. Dave, I'll start with you. I know you can weigh in on so many markets, the economy. I mean, is there anything, let me put it this way, that you think is mispriced? And what would the economic implications be? Vastly different, as Jim Cramer kind of hinted at earlier this hour, with Harris instead of Biden on the ticket, or even as the potential winner?
You know, I saw Jim's interview. I guess I think the differences would be probably pretty slim, Kelly. I don't think you're going to get a lot of clarity on big differences in how we would be forecasting economic growth, payrolls, even inflation. I don't think that'll be the market's first instinct. The market first instinct is going to be not to look at the economy and the implication, but more to look at the risk scenarios that come up. Who is her VP? What are the odds of Trump? What are the odds of a Democratic candidate, whether her or someone else? And we just get a lot more in the distribution. Now the distribution is a little bit more complicated. I'm a little surprised the market's taking it as well as it is, but maybe the resolution of uncertainty on Biden is kind of being applauded. We know that's gone. But once the market wakes up and goes, wait a minute, I got to put in a whole bunch of different VP scenarios and maybe, Kamala not being the candidate. So I think it's a tricky one.
Dave, do you think on the margin that Jim is right, that she's perceived as more business or markets friendly than Biden, or even than Trump and Vance? That was his argument.
I think it would be a big stretch to go all the way to say more than Trump. Although, he was right about Vance's more populist stance. We had a very strong move toward populism with Vance, and I think the markets, they saw the union head speaking and sort of big business being thrown a little under the bus in that sense. So I really doubt people are going to get a Harris administration above a Trump administration is more business friendly. That would shock me. Whether she's more or less than Biden is up for debate, and we'll have to see what she says. We have a lot to learn, and the distribution just got a lot wider.
And Sarat, as some would say, well, Trump would still be seen. He would be more deregulatory focused, you would imagine, than a Harris presidency. Probably not pushing a green agenda that would be as kind of imposed from the top as she would. So it seems some classical ways that the parties would still align with what you imagine might be. Now, I don't know how you talk about that, though, as implications for the economy, because we've seen President Biden able to steer massive fiscal dollars towards sectors that are seeing huge inflows. And we've seen a lot of stock trades off the back of that as well. So what would you envision?
I think she's inheriting President Biden's policies. And I think for her, as David said so articulately, she has to now figure out how to differentiate herself amongst the rest of the candidates, if that's going to happen. And then really, what are her policies? So right now, we don't know. We just can assume that it's going to be more of the same. And if that is the case right now, the stock market's kind of voting on its feet. And the stock market's really going to vote on its feet going forward. So as some of the uncertainty gets resolved, and if there is less uncertainty as to if she's the candidate, then I think, again, we have to look at the polls. We have to look and see where the markets are going and who's going to be more business friendly. And right now, unless she says something drastically different, it would seem that her policies are going to be very similar. It's going to be.
Who do you think? So let's say you own the NVIDIA or you own the Fab 5, the Mag 7, Sarat. Which administration is better for those stocks, do you think?
Well, I think at this point, Silicon Valley really likes the Trump administration, and you saw that last week, which was kind of a change given what we had 4 years ago. But J.D. Vance has, he came up in that part of the world, so you've got that, and we also know that the Trump administration, there is rhetoric, and he will be talking about what to do, but the question will be what will really happen. And he did tariffs before, and will do tariffs again. So that's kind of embedded, but he's also pro-business. So I think it'll be interesting for Kamala Harris to say how is she going to, do more of that, and if she starts going more pro-business and where taxes come across, she could lose some of her base too.
Right.
So I think she's got to play a fine line there too, as to say how pro-business am I going to be, and what does that mean in terms of taxes, et cetera, because that's where the money's coming from too right now. So I think the uncertainty for her right now is, hey, let me get this done, but at the same time, I think the Trump administration's going to actually start moving ahead on a lot of other things too.